All right, this is follow-up part 2 to the COVID considerations. Part 1, we identify the problem that a lot of our athletes are going to experience right now, that they're not playing. They're not getting ready, they're not staying on their feet, they're not able to continue to stay fit and prepare for their upcoming seasons. So this part 2 is the follow-up, the solution to the problem. And again, thankfully, people much smarter than I am have put in the work to find the best way to mitigate that. Now, the NSCA is the National Strength and Conditioning Association, and they're the go-to. They're the sports research, the science behind it all. They're the method to the madness behind a lot of what is programmed for our athletes. So, what can we do to help mitigate these stresses of athletes returning to sport without being injured or mitigating that risk of injury? And the goal is a nice ramp-up period. So we're going to take a look at a 4-week cycle that's going to help ramp our athletes back up to activity. Now, the first thing you have to consider is, and ask yourself, what do you consider a long training session and what do you consider a short training session? So purely as far as duration, okay? So, and then you have to figure out what your ideal long session is. And we multiply that by how many days a week the athletes are going to be practicing. So this is our goal. This is our target that we're going to work for. And that's going to be our week 4 target. So let's just say a long practice for you is 2 hours. And let's just say a short practice could be anything from 25 to 30 minutes, okay? So if your ideal practice is 2 hours and you can play 6 days a week because the NHPS and the NSCA allow our student athletes to play 6 days of any 7-day cycle, you have to take 6 days, multiply it by 2 hours. So the most amount of days in a week you can play and the most amount of hours that you want to practice. So 6 times 2 is 12. That's 12 hours a week. And that is your target goal that you're working up to. So that is week 4. Weeks 1, 2, and 3 are going to give us a way to ramp up to that safely. So week 1 is 50% of that overall volume. So you're going to take 12 hours, multiply it by 50%. That gives us 6 hours, right? So that's nice, easy math for me. So 6 hours spread over 6 days, because again, 6 days is the only thing you're allowed to do in a 7-day cycle. So it's not as simple as 1 hour a day. I mean, you can make it that if you really want to, but some practices can be a little longer as long as you make that up somewhere else and they're not on their feet for longer than 6 hours. So the 6 days for that week, however you're breaking down your practices, remember I said 30 minutes could be considered a successful short training session for you. So maybe one of your days or 2 of your days is 30 minutes, and that extra 30 minutes you're spreading out throughout the other 4, 5, 6 days. So that's absolutely doable. So week 1 is 50% total volume. So 6 hours spread however you want it. Week 2 is 70% of that 12 hours. Week 3 is 80%. And then week 4 is where we get up to 90 to 100% total volume of time of athletes on their feet, okay? So the other thing that you want to consider is the intensity. So you should alternate high intensity training days with low intensity days. You shouldn't be doing a lot of fitness in the beginning back to back or even at the end of week 1 or week 2. You always want to alternate. One day is a high intensity day, the next day is a low intensity day. This is where it's important to talk to your athletes and find out what their RPE is, what they're telling you, how their body feels, how they're responding. Everybody's going to be responding differently, and so it's going to be really crucial to have the athletes stay accountable. Young adults, student athletes, this is some of their responsibility to tell you how they're feeling and report what their fitness is, what their health is overall. Okay, even mental stress can play into this. And the last thing I want to say is alternating how many days in a row you're practicing. So week 1, even though you're allowed 6 days in a row, it's probably not a good idea. So week 1, you should practice for 3 days and then take a day off and then finish the 3 days. Week 2 should be 4 days on and then 1 day off. Week 5 should be 5 days on, 1 day off. And then week 4 is going to be 6 days on and 1 day off. So you're working up to that full total volume. So this is how we really hope that coaches would approach the preseason coming up to really help mitigate those risks of injury. In the past, you only had to worry about acclimatizing 1 or 2 athletes due to illness or sickness or time away. But now the entire lot of athletes are going to be coming in unfit and undertrained, and they all have to be reacclimatized, and this is the best way to do it. So thankfully the NSCA put out these guidelines to reacclimatize athletes into activity after prolonged periods of inactivity, and it's our job to get them to the finish line safely at the end of the year. Get your athletes healthy, keep them healthy for the postseason. That's what it's all about. So a lot of our coaches have really been liking this, and we always love applying some intelligent design because intelligent design always wins. we go where the science tells us to go, and we have some fun along the way. So if you have any questions, throw them our way, but we hope this helps.